here at the Indus Valley for making this possible, and to everybody who is already connected. Really, it's very strange not be able to see your faces, but anyway, it's as good as it gets, I think. It's also, I mean, this new way of relationship also makes this kind of things possible. Well, also we would like to thank Sarosh. Perhaps he is listening. We don't know. We will know later. Okay. We would like to show you some of the work we have done in the last years at our studio, Bios Lion Arquitectos. As Samaila said, we are based in Santiago, Chile. We are a very small practice, and honestly, we like it that way because this allows us to be involved in every stage of design, from the details to the construction site and everywhere. So we've been like remaining in that very small size, which is it's good for us. Okay, and perhaps Loreto could give you some insight or a brief introduction about the place where we work in Chile. Okay, and then we will continue with this presentation.
Okay,
Loreto.
thank you. Thank you again. Yes, can you hear me? It's okay?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much again. Okay, as you might know, Chile is very far away from Pakistan, and it's a long and very thin country at the very end of America. In 1929, Le Corbusier visited South America, and he drew this sketch of a section cutting from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. Buenos Aires, the Pampa, the Andes, and finally, Chile. Argentina, our neighbor, is shown as a vast and flat territory, while Chile, a steep cliff that dives directly into the ocean. Also, historically, our country has suffered from major earthquakes. Chile is one of the most seismically active areas in the world and requires all buildings to be taller than many places in the world. This, together with the precarious of vernacular construction, has caused cities to be in constant changes. Everything all is easily raised. History is quickly forgotten, and the little heritage that remains appears as island or disconnect fragments within the city.
Well, we entitled this presentation, Communal Life, We Miss You, because the invitation was to reflect perhaps on this new scenario that COVID has imposed, you know, in our lives. And I've heard, sorry, many times that COVID only sped up changes that already were taking place in our society, in our life. And this might be true. I mean, we were all very used to establish this kind of new relationship through our mobile phones, through the screens, but it's really not the same. No, it's and COVID opened up this kind of new, or this window to look into the future, and I think most of us didn't like it, what we experienced during lockdown, this feeling of being isolated, communicating only by our mobile phones, and missing all this direct contact with other people. For example, we recently taught a studio at the university in Venice, an online studio. These were our students. And even though it was a very successful, I would say, experience, it lacked this. This was a studio we made at the same place 2 or 3 years ago. And mostly what we missed was this feeling of this possibility to have chance encounters, conversations, and not always within the classroom, but mostly in the city with our students or professors. And well, architecture is really the background for all this to happen, for this communal life, for this public life. And this is what we will talk about in this presentation. To explain this kind of spaces, or to explain how we believe or how we understand architecture as a backdrop for these situations and life to happen, we will explain it with this example. It's a recount of a personal experience we had in London whilst we were living there. We used to live in a very small apartment, very typical terrace house, and it has very small sash windows which framed the landscape and the street, the views from the interior of the house. The relationship between interior and exterior was very separated. It was a very hermetic relationship. But one morning, all this changed because the building was being renovated. All these very thin members of steel and layers of fabric wrapped the building, very common scaffolding system. But as precarious as this was, this allowed a completely different relationship between the interior of the apartment and the exterior. Now we were able, and this structure remained there like for 6 months, and we were able to put some flower pots outside, to take some chairs out, to do a barbecue, and suddenly we started a completely new relationship between the interior and the exterior. We became more fluid, more, you could say, a blurred or a more blurry relationship. But most importantly, I think, was the fact that we start knowing our neighbors. We became acquainted with them. So it's this kind of spaces what we are trying to incorporate in our architecture. These spaces that allow for this experience of communal life to happen. We also like very much, and we also always reference to this story or this text, Species of Spaces by George Perec, where he recounts a story or describes the spaces, a series of spaces, beginning with the personal space, with the space of the self, with his bed, and then he goes on to the room, to the apartment building, and to the city, and so on. And we think it is possible to find all these kind of communal spaces that allow communal life within all these scales. Even though, I mean, it is obviously different, the communal space or the space for communal life in a house, that on an apartment or on an apartment building, on a public building. But however, every project we try to build this communal or this space for communal life, no matter its size or its scale. And to begin with, we will show you very briefly some of the smaller projects we have done in the past years, where the attention to detail, the material, because of the closeness to the user, it's very important how we define all these aspects of the project.
Okay, this is a very small library that we did in a school. It was like more like a refurbishment, and what we tried to do was to make like a new furniture that little kids can be together and can find together, and they can read together. So it was made like a new furniture inside another
a bigger structure, inside a bigger structure. But it's important that there is always these two components: a space for a more retired, perhaps, or personal situation, which you can see in these niches, in these small boxes. But there is also space for, I mean, to be together, for bigger groups of people. This is the plan. It's very simple. Loreto, if you want to.
No, yes, and this is the main library plan, because we start doing the little one, and then we did the big one. So the most important thing for us was in this, like furniture, you can find spaces to find with other people. So it's a little bit like Perek said, like in a furniture, you still can find places to be together again.
Yes, this project was very much about all the details and the different textures and materials. Yes, and then moving on, a bigger scale, still very private, but we will show you a series of houses where we conceived, I mean, obviously some spaces which are for public, I mean, intended for public or public life, and there are others, the rooms mostly, which or where you can retire and be alone or by yourself. So all you see, all that you can see here in white, you know, with a white background, is what it's intended to be the public space of the house. This house is in the south of Chile, where it's a very rainy and cold area. And we use a completely timber frame structure. Everything is timber covered in wood, you know, in order to reference these kind of structures you can find around, which have been there for many years. And we wanted the house to blend in with these structures, to go unnoticed, mostly because we wanted to be part of that territory, of that sort of collection of structures. So the house mostly opens the views towards the views, but otherwise the sides of the house remain pretty hermetic and closed as well. It's a kind of barn.
Yes, all the facades are treated with a black sealer, much used in the rural buildings in the south of Chile to protect them from the persistent rain. Okay, this is another house as well that we will show. This is in central Chile. In Chile, we have very different kind of weather. In the south, it's more rainy. In the central Chile, it's more Mediterranean, a little bit hotter in the summer. So this is a house there in the central Chile, and also try to be part of a little bit with the vernacular volumes that you can find there as well. And here is a very simple house where you can see in white the communal places and in black the private places. So again, the places where people can meet is very important for us, and the relation with the surround. And the materials that we use. The materials of the house, as you see in the facade, are bricks, but they are painted with a typical white paint from there that is cal. And also try to be like a barn as well, to be a little, because it's in the outside of the city, okay, and as well near a farm.
Yeah,
but the relationship with the landscape is very important. Yeah.
And this gallery is where all the life will happen, because the weather is very mild in this area. So we hope that the main life of this house will happen in this open gallery that it's very, I mean, it goes or runs along the whole, every room of this house.
And as you will see in another projects of us in the same area, the galleries here, this in-between space is very, very important, because it's a place that in summer is really hot. This is another house, now as well in the center of the country, close to a winery. And for this house, we start by looking at the tradition of using patios as the main spatial organization within the domestic space in the area. This house is traversed by a sequence of diagonal voids around which all other spaces are organized for these patios, okay? The materials are also referenced to those old houses around, which are structured by the use of thick mud walls. Similarly, the stones we use are the same you can find on the site. All these subjects constantly direct our work, the memories about past experience and places, and how they are related to specific spatial conditions and materials.
For example, we always try to incorporate these elements we find in or around the site in order to blend in with the surroundings. And this last house we will show you is in this kind of first scale of our work. It's again a house in the south of Chile. It's for a very big family, or kind of 3 families that go together for this summer house. And again, it's similar to the first house we showed you in terms that we try to blend in with these other kind of buildings. All of the structure is done. It's made out of timber. But most importantly, I think, is the fact that the house is organized around spaces where they could gather or they could be together. For example, this gallery, or the main living space, which is this one, which is inside the main volume, looking towards the lake, is where the people will gather, will have this kind of, we spend the afternoons. We try to imagine what they will do in these kind of spaces.
Yeah, although we are talking about communal space and where people can meet again, but in all our projects, the materials and the relation with the exterior and with the space that is outside is very, very important, and what it is in the surroundings. Also, the interior spaces are very important, and that relation with the exterior. And changing scales, because we were first in the furniture, then in the houses, and then this is another, like a small building. It's for living in a small. It's in Santiago city. That is the main city of Chile, the capital. But it's in an very center. It's in the middle of the center of Santiago. This you can see here where that is surrounded about like from a park and other very important places that we have around. Yeah. But what is important in this project is this, what it looks like is for social housing, and it's trying this to bring to social housing in the city and to have this communal life. It's very important for us to think that living, you can have this communal life in the street, for example, in the city. So this was the original building. Yeah, and this is in a typical area. So we have to remain with the height of the building and also with all the facade. Yeah.
It's an old area which currently it's experiencing a process of transformation because it was abandoned for many years, and now it's becoming alive again, you could say. And the building that's now on site is in very bad shape, so we need to take it down and replace it with this new structure, which tries to incorporate some aspects of these buildings, or even the same building that's now on the site, which is mostly the relationship between the voids of the facade, the proportions of the openings in relationship to the walls. Okay, we didn't, obviously we couldn't build a building all covered in glass or with very big openings, but we wanted to incorporate this scale, which was similar to what exists before on the site. And this is a building for mostly that will be for, how you could say it, given to people who cannot afford, like, and it's a kind of social housing, okay? And it has a patio or different spaces, even a roof terrace where people could gather and have this sense of community within the project. And now moving on to a series of public buildings, which is more evident this this intention to work around this idea of communal space. We will show you this. This is a town hall we built after a competition we won in central Chile. This is located in a small town called Nancagua, which is a small rural town in central Chile, which was devastated by the last major earthquake in 2010. And the building aims to create a space able to accommodate various public situations and events. And the former council building, which is this one I'm showing you, which was the former patronal house of this this big area, was severely damaged after this earthquake. And then the town got funding to restore the old house, but they needed to turn it into a cultural center. So they decided to move the city hall offices to a new building, which will be located on a site that was neighboring with this park, which was the park of the old house. So this is the site, this one I'm showing with this hand. And they decided to call a competition. And the park was a very beautiful park with very old and big trees. And at the time of the competition, this was a sort of backyard in this city, in this town. It was very difficult to access. It wasn't used really. And the town, it didn't have any kind of public space or plaza or square, anything where they could meet. So we decided to incorporate this park, which has a lot of value, into this structure, into the urban structure of the town. This is the old house where the former city council was, which has this very particular, I think, condition that it is elevated from the ground floor, but it also has this gallery around. And this is the site where it used to be a taxi parking, and it was very unused, and we wanted to bring the park into the city and to connect it with this public life. If the competition, this is what they ask on the competition. They ask for a very compact volume and with all the offices inside, and then on the back of this volume and towards the park, they wanted to have a parking lot. Instead of this kind of condition or alternative we decided that rather than building a volume in the center of the site, we will build a void in the center of the site. So all the program moved towards the borders, and in that way we will have this new and unexistent space for public life. Once we had this void in the center of the lot, we open it to the city on this corner, and also we open it to the park here on the back. And these two different openings relate in a specific way to the surroundings. To the park, it has this very high gallery, which reminds of this, we think when we designed this project, we thought about this kind of spaces, like the Piazza San Marco in Venice. Obviously, it's very different, very old, and it's quite big. But what we find most interesting about these spaces is that what you remind of these spaces is not the buildings around the space, but the space itself, the void that is surrounded by the buildings, or the agora, which is much older, of course, the agora in Assos in Greece. You don't remember the buildings again. You remember the void, the shape of this void. We wanted to have this experience of space. So what was most important was to define the borders of the buildings, the borders that will contain the void inside. And well, you can see the situation here, the situation plan, where is the new building and how it connects this void, all the city, the urban fabric with the old park behind. And what we learned from this old city hall, this old house that was damaged, was and wanted to incorporate in the new project, was this space, which is again the gallery, the space between the interior and the exterior, very much like the scaffolding we had in our own apartment. And mostly because this space allowed for a lot of unexpected life to happen. This is where all the people gather, talk, and this was really unplanned. We wanted to incorporate this kind of space, hoping that we will recreate this kind of unexpected life within the building. So we copied exactly the same dimensions of the former gallery, the proportions, and even some of the materials of the old house, like the bricks on the plinth. This is the old house and the new project. So we wanted to establish this dialogue with the old structure within our building. So you can see the main space, it's surrounded by this gallery, which runs around the whole perimeter of the void. And under the volumes where the offices are, there is a space for the parking without disturbing this continuity between the city and the park. So what you remind when visiting this building, what you remind the most is the void within the volumes and not really the shape of the volumes. All this space is now planted with trees in order to also to help to bring the greenery of the park closer to the city, and that way to establish a more fluid relationship between these two poles of the project. So the whole project works as a big threshold that connects these two very different situations, the city and the park. I'll show you some photographs. These were when it was very recently finished, the project, and then you will see how the project is now being used and with bigger trees and so on. This is the gallery that connects the main public, the new public void with the park. And this is the view you get when looking towards the city and from the park. And all these are photographs taken by different photographers who had visited the site, and we kind of enjoyed the different approaches they've got with the building, how they relate kind of talk about their experience of the building, how they understand the space, and so on. And again, like perhaps like in the library, we wanted to have this kind of spaces for, you know, to be alone or in a very small groups of people, but also to allow for this kind of situations, which was really unexpected. I mean, it was unplanned. We thought that these kind of things could happen, but now this space, which wasn't on the brief of the competition, it's a paradox that it became perhaps the most important space within this town, which didn't have a space like this before. Loreto, would you like to explain this? Or?
Yes. Okay, this project is a library for the National Congress in Santiago. This is also a competition that we won in 2014. And it's the conversion of the UNEUS building, a 1924 building, as a new National Congress library. And this project, okay, this is the plan of the center of Santiago, where you can see our project is there. Yeah, where is the hand? It's the black one. And in number 1 is the main square of our capital of Santiago. And then that square is surrounded by very important buildings like the cathedral and other buildings. So it's very it's really in the city center of Santiago. Mm-hmm. So having that in mind, in this kind of city that is a continuous city and all the facades are very continuous, what we really all the time, what we really try to have in our minds are the interior that you can find in this kind of cities. And for example, this is the interior of the cathedral. And it's very important for us, these kind of spaces that are memorable and really you always remember. So this is the plan of these interiors. So in this continuous facade of the city, you will find these interior spaces with memorable interior spaces that you will remember. So having that in mind, we try to do this transformation. This is the UNEUS building with a circle, and it's in front, as I told you before, of the old Congress. This is it's really in front of the old Congress, and this should be the new library of the Congress. So what we try to do is to make a memorable space inside, a space that people will remember. So this is a building that we need to refurbish, and this is the Congress, and we have this void as well in front that was very important for us as well. And also we have a small, very small on the side.
There's an alley on the side of the building. And the building, even on the outside, it has this very kind of, it was a historic building, a building like, it looked like it could have a big interiors or spaces, very kind of different spaces. What you find inside is a very regular and very common space with very low, high, but with no partitions. This was one of the first, I think, free open plan buildings in Santiago, which work with this concrete structure of posts and beams. So the question was how to incorporate this space you remember, a kind of special space within a building that has very common or ordinary scale inside. And we also thought about this experience we had in London, which was when you visit this small and very beautiful museum, the John Son house, the architect's house, you find in the end, after walking around all the collections in very small spaces, very compact spaces, it's kind of a very labyrinthic interior. You find this very high space which is the space I think you remember the most inside, where is the sarcophagus here at the bottom. It has a very distinctive light, which kind of bath all the objects and the inside of the space. So we wanted to incorporate this kind of atmosphere within the building. We also thought about the interventions by the artist Gordon Matta Clark. This is the one at the Pompidou before building the museum, where by perforating an existing building, he introduces a new scale, a new space within the building. So we began by looking into different alternatives about how to bring in a bigger space into the building. And we finally decide to perforate all the building with a void that could connect the public space of the street with a new main public space on top of the building. And around this void will be the whole collection of the National Congress Library. Because one of the aims was to also to open this otherwise hermetic institution, closed institution, to the public, and that way to bring closer the members of the parliament with the general public. So if in the city hall, the void, you remember, is surrounded by buildings, here, this void, we wanted to incorporate this public space, was inside the building and running all along it. So in the plans you see how this void moves backwards as you go higher in the different floors, okay? Because that way we could have the bigger and longer space possible by perforating the building in a diagonal way.
Yeah.
We also wanted...
Yeah. No, another important thing was that we wanted to show the structure, the original structure of the building. Yeah. So, like in this picture, we want that the structure, the original structure, was the central in this void. Mm-hmm. So the structure, the original structure, the concrete original structure, it's part of this memorial space.
This is an illustration of the story by Jorge Luis Borges, an Argentinian writer who describes a never-ending library. We also want to have this feeling of a library that extends infinitely within a building. This is what we try to do with this staircase, and also by the materiality we use on both ends of this main space. At the bottom, we use this polished black stone, and at the top, this golden metallic mesh, which will filter the light within this void in order to also to kind of reflect both ends of the void, and that way to make it more, or to make it bigger. So from the top, once you arrive at the top, you can see the whole stair, this spiraling stair around the structure. And you arrive to this new cafe on top, which is going to be open to the public. And at the street level, again, the library opens to public life. This other project is a subway station, which is very close to the library. The library was here, and on the same block, this is the metro, the subway station, which is part of a new approach by the subway company to build on top of stations, which hasn't happened before here in Santiago, at least. Because they were intervening already in historical center, they wanted to rebuild the whole continuity of the city block as well. So that was one of the main aims of the project. This was the former house that used to be on that corner. it was demolished or burnt down. We don't really know, but that happened like 100 years ago, or perhaps there was an earthquake that make it unusable. But we wanted to rebuild this continuity, as I said, on the facade. Okay, and this was the former, what replaced that continuity, the building that was here before. So it was a site that could be intervened without damaging or taking down any of these historical structures. In the city center, it has a very intense wear at the first, I would say, 2 or 3 meters of the buildings are used very intensively. They have to deal with friction, with people, with all the hassle of the city. Okay, but on top, like on these structures, you could build a different volume, which could be more delicate, perhaps. But we want to have this distinction between the base, a plinth, and what will be built on top. So in the end, we decide to have a vaulted room here at ground floor, and then on top, a volume that could filter the light within the space, which is going to be office space, and also to become part of that continuity of the facade. So the building is divided in these 2 main elements. One, which has to deal with the friction of the city, and the other, which tries to be part of this grain or this scale of the surrounding buildings. And because of regulation on the city center, this is a protected area, we couldn't have a glass facade. Okay, we needed to have an opaque volume on top, but because the interiors were offices, we searched for a material that could filter the light, but at the same time from the exterior to be opaque. So we wrapped this whole building in a alabaster stone, and in that way using glass in a very few places, and that way we could have a natural light within all the floor plan, but without being a completely or fully glazed building. It also speaks about the public condition of the building. It's kind of lamp in the middle of the city. So you can see the structure here. This is all the columns that hold the ground in order to excavate the tunnels to reach the underground level. Then comes this very tough structure that, because it was a very key piece of infrastructure, has an even stronger regulations regarding earthquakes and structure. And then on top comes this lighter envelope. Yeah, so what you remind of this building, what we were interested the most was about to build a kind of experience, a particular experience at ground level, which is the main space you reach when you go out of the underground structure. It's the first place where you come in touch, or you see all the whole site. And we wanted to bring some of this underground experience, like in these caves, to this new space. That's why we decide to work with these vaults, and it also provided a very, I think, efficient way of covering the span of the whole span of the space, but also giving a particular atmosphere to the interior.
Yeah, also for us it was very important to continue with the facade, the exterior facade, but in the interior was very important to have a memory space, a unique space within the city that you will remember, like other interior space that you find in the main central city.
So this memorable space, it's built using mainly two sizes of bolts. One which is 3.60 meters wide by 12 meters long, and the other is half of it. And when we thought about this, we obviously had to think about how this could be built. And so we started to research about formwork and the different components that could build this shape we have in mind. So in order to make it real. So I think the most important drawings of this project are the drawings of the scaffolding that could hold the structure on top, and how it could be built. So it's taking. So the first thing we had to build was the formwork of the columns. It's a bit slow now, the presentation. Sorry, it's not working now.
We are stuck.
That's okay, no worries.
There it is. There's drawings, perhaps what's making everything slower. But you can see all the columns were placed at different intervals, also because we had some restrictions about where we could support the structure. We couldn't touch the ground on every spot. So these different modules help us to have this configuration of space.
Yes, the scaffoldings that we need to do for these bolts were the main thing. Were very. It was the first time that a structure like this was done in Chile, I think, from many years ago, and it was a very important how to build it, and the formwork was very important, and because there were double curvature bolts, and also we need to reuse this form. So that's why we decide to have just two kind of or three kind of bolts: the big ones, the small ones, and the corner ones. So that can allow us to reuse the formwork.
Let me see if I think I'll stop sharing for just to try to, and then go back to this presentation, which is stuck.
Yeah, with the drawings. Good.
Okay, I think the whole world is used to technical Zoom glitches now.
Yeah. Loreto, what if you resume the presentation from your computer? Will it work? Or past these drawings, perhaps these drawings are the ones that are giving trouble. Loreto, we can't hear you.
Okay, I will do it.
Oh, no, here it is. Okay. No, again. Sorry about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see it now if I do full screen.
Ya va, no, sáltate los dibujos, Loreto.
Sí. If I do full screen, please let me know if you can see.
No.
Can you zoom in a bit? It's not
No.
maximizing.
No? No?
No.
Se ve full screen.
Okay, I cannot do the full screen thing.
Ahí está mejor. Dale ahí.
Yeah, that's a good size.
Yeah. Once my computer resumes, we can change again.
Yeah. Okay. This is when we start the construction of the bolts. These are the columns. And for example, in Chile, because of the earthquakes as well, we have a lot of different kind of laws that you cannot concrete everything in continuity. You have to cut the columns from the other part of the structure. So we have this cut that was a very important one. Then this is the city's side. And that is the cathedral, the main cathedral of the city center.
Those were all the formwork pieces inside. Dale más rápido, si no.
Okay, and this is the walls. And how they appear in the city, and then.
So it became a really unexpected, I don't know, experience of being within this place and how you relate to the surroundings, which we really liked. The light, how entered the space, and the reflection, the shading of these bolts, and so on. Well, the plans are very simple, really. It's open plan on top offices, and but the space we were most interested in was the space at street level, okay, which is the space for communal life.
This building was almost ready last October, but also we have some social crisis here in Chile, and then the station, it was open for 2 weeks and then was closed again. That's what is a shame. And this is the materials that Alejandro already talked about, the materials that are in the first and the second floor, materials that try to be part of this continuous facade, and with different layers we can make that. And also we can have this light in the inside because of the quality of the stone. So for us that light was very important. And as I said before, to have in the first and second floor, to have these layers also was very important, to explain to the main people that live there that we are part of that kind of old buildings of the city center, because we are in a typical, so we have laws to be in a typical place, and that laws is to be a part of that scenario, to that landscape that is the main city, that continuity. And for that, what we did a little research on all the facades of the street and all the different layers that we have there. So the layers, horizontal and vertical, will have the same in our building. So we have the plinth and then all the layers, the vertical and then the horizontal. And that layers allowed us to have the shades as well, that are very important in the facades.
Yeah.
So again, yeah, it was important for us to be part of the landscape, to be part of the city center, but as well to in this continuous city center, to have this memorable inside space, a space that you will remember when you were there and when you left that place.
Mm-hmm. Loreto, I think perhaps we could stop here, because we are already, I don't know, 50 minutes, so we can have time for questions and answers. What do you think? Sumaila, what do you think? It's
you can take, if you'd like to go on, we can take another 5 to 7 minutes and then take the Q&A, or we can.
Okay, we could go really quickly. Lotte, if you want, perhaps I could resume the presentation from my computer, which I think might be better resolution. But
okay. If you go very fast in this one, and then we finish with the JAP, I think it's better.
Yeah. Okay. Let me share my screen. Sure. Stop sharing. Sorry. Can you see my screen or not? No. Todo no lo escucho.
Yeah. Now we can see it.
You can see it now? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going into full screen mode. This project is the one that we are developing now, and also it's part of our one of the main interests we are having now, which is about the infrastructure and how infrastructure could become also a piece of public space, or a polyfunctional infrastructure, let's say. This is we got this this brief about a pedestrian path to connect in a coastal city in Chile, the upper part of the city with the coast, and a whole new development here on this lower side. So this is the place of our intervention, which is now a kind of groove within the terrain, where people used to walk from all this neighborhood to the lower parts of the city. It was very informal at the moment, and it's also a space where all the rainwater goes or runs when there is rain, and also this is a kind of escape route for eventual tsunamis. So there's a big we have to cover with all this intervention about 40 meters in difference in height. And what we like about old infrastructure like this one, also in Santiago, this was a contention wall for the main river, is that the infrastructures were not intended to perform just a single function, but also they were thought as public space, or space where people could walk or visit. It wasn't just infrastructure. I think this is very important, for instance, in this reference by Olmsted, the landscaper, who in Boston incorporated this idea of green infrastructure, where the project, the main function of the project was to communicate, you know, and to allow for the rainwater to go along the parks to the river, on all the sewage and so on, but also to have this series of green spaces that could become the main face of the whole city and the main public space. So we began by drawing this kind of, again, atmospheres we wanted to achieve with the project, how the project could relate to the landscape, and so on. And we thought about these different ways of moving within the reach, slower movement perhaps, or movements that could connect to the sites, to the bigger park, but also a direct movement. So we had all these superimpositions of ways of moving within the space. And then the project finally is this undulating pathway, which has to maintain a specific slope in order to allow for people, I don't know, in wheelchairs or with more difficult to walk, to move along all this intervention. But it also has a secondary structure with these stairs that allow for a faster way to walk within the project. And lastly, at ground level, there is all these walls here, these contention walls, retention walls, which will contain the rainwater that runs down the groove in order to retain this water and filter it to the terrain, to the ground. So the project is mostly an infrastructure because it's a pathway. But it's a multifunction infrastructure. It's a pathway. It also has to contain and to filter rainwater into the ground. It is an escape route for tsunamis, but I think most importantly, it's a green infrastructure. It's a green infrastructure because it's there to improve the well-being of the citizens who will use it. It will rebuild or reconstruct the ecosystem that it's very damaged on site. And that makes it, I think, a very kind of complete infrastructure, or an infrastructure that goes beyond its only functional or main functional aim.
Yeah, we wish that it is a new public space for that place. But we would like that this place be convert.
So in the end, the main objective was that this place become a space where all the people feels a feeling of belonging to this space. They care about it, they use it, and so on. So hopefully this will be, I mean, running along all the scales. We began with these very small projects, interior spaces like furniture size, and we end up in this landscape scale, but everything thinking about not only the space for personal experience, but also to think about the space where you could experience this communal life we miss so much in these lockdowns months. We had another project, but I think, Loreto, we end here so we can have time for questions and answers. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Alejandro and Laura. That was great, excellent projects. So we have one question, but before that, I guess I would like to pose a question more about, you've been practicing in Chile since 2012. Mm-hmm. So I guess in the last 8 years, what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced? Because before that you were in London and then you moved to Chile and started practicing there. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you face in the practice there?
Yeah. Well, when we arrived here, we were obviously without no clients and so on. So we decided to practice mostly into the public sphere, public competitions. And that was very challenging because when doing public competitions in a context like Chile, and which is very different to London, the perception of public space is that public space belongs to no one. Okay, people, at least here in our country, people take care a lot of the space which is the private space within their private boundaries, but the space that's the street space or the public space is not really taken care of, which is very different to other countries or London itself, where people feels the street, the parks like their own. I think that was probably the most challenging, difference and aspect of working in this environment, to deal with public clients and try to convince them of the relevance and importance of this public space as the main space to build within the projects. You know?
Yeah, perhaps another challenge or difficult we have that when we start our practice in 2012, okay, we started, as Alejandro already told you, like doing competitions, and we won. Like we have like 4 or 5 public buildings and public spaces, but what is the challenge is to construct them. It's very difficult to construct them, and because you won the competition and then you develop the project as an architect, but then to construct the project is many years. So I think that is also a challenge, and we hope and we are still, like for example, the one that you saw, the library, the new Congress library. That was a competition that we won in 2014. It was finished, the complete project, in 2016, and we are still, waiting
for funding.
For funding, the money, the government found the money to construct it. So it takes very long to construct public things here in Chile. So that's a challenge.
I think if you spoke to everyone in Karachi, they would probably have much similar sentiment with both of the challenges that you mentioned.
We also have only 4-year periods of changing of administration. We change every 4 years. So these kind of projects, we are public projects, they also have a political element into it. So if one, I don't know, administration start or pushes to build one of these projects, perhaps the next one won't have the same, I don't know, the same intention, but it's changing all the time, and it's very challenging, really.
Okay, well, we have quite a few questions. So I'll start with the first one. So in the subway, are the vaults entirely of reinforced concrete, or is alabaster stone used?
No, the vaults are reinforced concrete, which has some, how to call that, some spacers inside in order to take out the concrete in the areas where it's not needed structurally. And
to lighten the structure.
Yeah, and then on top of this plinth, which is all concrete because of, as we said, like earthquake regulations. On top of this very strong concrete base or plinth, there is the envelope of alabaster, which has a very simple structure inside. The alabaster, it's obviously not structural, but it has it's an open plan with a few columns and beams inside and slabs. Okay, all that is reinforced concrete, but the facades are alabaster and glass. It's a double layer of alabaster and glass. Inside the alabaster, there is a second layer of very I don't know, ordinary windows, like very common windows.
Okay. There is something important about that. Something that we have learned with the public buildings and public competitions, that here in Chile, at least, the main structure, everything that is in concrete and everything that is part of the main structure, when goes to the construction, they will never change nothing that's come from the engineers and that is for the structure, but they will change things for the, for the envelopes or things that are not very important, like the structure. So because of that, we learn to do our project mainly structurals, with not too many layers of how do you say, Alejandro, like
cladding or
finishings. Finishings.
Okay.
So that's why as well, as in Nancagua, for example, the columns are just concrete, and mainly the structural materials we use, not many finishings, because they will take it away anyway. So
the contractors really, because in these public projects, we as architects are authors of the project. We are not not always involved in the construction process, and that is very bad. So the people who is in charge of the construction site, which are part of the public works ministry, they could change the project, but it will never change the structure. So we try to define the main qualities of the space by using the structure and anything else, so they can't change it afterwards.
Okay, so another question, should we be designing differently for communal life owing to the current pandemic, or does doing that eventually harm the way we as people socialize, collaborate, and live?
Yeah, I think that well, we are optimistic about this. We think that this will eventually pass, like with many pandemics before. More than thinking about how we could live, I think, separated, in this new scenario, we would like to think how we could go back to live together, I think. As I said at the beginning, this kind of this lockdown open a window to a future that the way we used to relate to each other. It's not that we are not going back to be together, but I'm really kind of worried about how we are relating to each other, mostly by using, our cell phones. It's something that it's really impressive how this has changed the way we relate to each other. Obviously, it's not everything negative, but I think that the lockdown allows us to see is that when this become extreme and we're starting to hang out with our friends using a screen and so on, it's so different and you miss so much. So hopefully we try to incorporate in all of our designs space or who allow for this communal life to happen. But I think that this will happen. I think we shouldn't change the way we design because of this, but it allows us to reflect on what it's more important to design in the future, I think.
Okay. Loretta, did you want to add anything before I move on to the next question?
No, it's okay. It's
okay.
Fine.
So how do you understand and create strategies to attract unexpected communal activity into your spaces?
Because there are unexpected activities, we don't plan it. We really don't plan it. No, but we really like it. It's like, for example, in Nancagua, for us, was a very unexpected, kind of life that is happening there. But also it's a little bit expected because before of that, they didn't have a place to do that. Look, those kind of parties, because the ones that we saw is the main, national party. So at the end, I think it's very important to create those kind of. It's something that for my students, sometimes I told them, it's like the space that you don't, people do not earn money from that space, because it's not a space that you can sell. But for example, in a living building or in a housing, or whatever, or even in a public building, there are not square meters that you can sell. But I think there are square meters that you can give to people that are amazing. So we try to do all the time those kind of spaces, these communal spaces or exterior spaces, and also these in-between spaces that we think that are really, really important as well, from the interior, from the exterior.
And I think when thinking about the strategies to create these open-ended spaces, I think it's very important to think on conditions rather than programs. You could have like you could think about a wide range of programs that could take place on a space, but more importantly, I think it's to create the conditions for these functions to happen. For example, in the city hall, I think the main space, it was very important that it was big enough to hold a whole community. So I think the oversized spaces allow for different occupation or open-ended occupation. When it's too tight, when everything is thought to contain very specific situations, it immediately leave out a whole range of different situations to happen. Another strategy, I think, is the shading, whether by trees or galleries, or it allows for different, situations to happen. If you have a completely uncovered space, is obviously different. So it's to provide, I think, as Loreto said, this is a mixture between open space, in between space, and that way you could give space for people who want to perform, or people who want to gather, to be together, but also to people who want to just to look at these events, or to be separated from them, or to be alone or on a smaller scale. I think it's important to create the background for this kind of two ends of situations to happen: the more personal life or situations, and then on the other end, the communal situation or collective situation to happen.
Yeah, I think it's important to think in spaces without any function at the end, and that kind of spaces will allow that these unexpected things happen.
Great. Okay, one last question before we wrap it up. So in terms of structure, how do you begin the process of designing it or solving it? Does this process happen simultaneously and within the process of design itself? Or does it happen at a later stage when the project is about to become real?
No, I think it's very central to think about. Well, because we are not interested really in creating this kind of iconic buildings, or buildings who are recognized by its shape or its outer shape, but mostly want or people to remember our buildings or our projects by the experience of being in them. I think when we talk about experience, it's very important to think about the materials you use, how they will feel to the touch, to how you will hear inside the spaces, the temperature, and so on. And it's not only visual, the experience. If you want to create a more intense experience, it's not only visual. And because of that, the materials and therefore the structure are very important when defining this space. It's these two aspects you cannot separate them, structure from material. So it needs to be defined from the very beginning of the project, or at least defined what you want to achieve with this with the project, and within or in the when experiencing the project. Okay, and we always work as a method. I don't know, but we never start, we as architects, from scratch. We are always kind of commenting also on work done by others. Like, we show you some examples, some references when explaining these projects, and there are many more. We constantly accumulate in our kind of background when we visit work done by others, or study in books work done by others. So I think it's important to be aware that to be part of this tradition of architecture, like when designing, when deciding what to do with in terms of structure, material, and so on. Yeah, I think we feel like part of a tradition of architecture, kind of in terms of we don't start from scratch, but we try to find or to look at past projects and to infuse with this kind of qualities into a new structure.
Okay. But as I said before, here in Chile, it's impossible to think the buildings without the structure. So we want that the structure is the main piece, you know, of our projects. So it's part of the quality that we want to have in our projects and the experience. So we start from the beginning with the structure because it's part of this experience of being inside the project. Because for us, as I said before, we are very interested in the experience to be inside. You know, for us, the interiors, the places that you remember, that are very important as well as this in-between space and then the outside space. But the experience is something very important for us as well. And also, we think, perhaps to finish, that in our country, when we came back as well, we recognized that we were surrounded by very good architects, and our country was known by those architects, and mainly because of these beautiful private houses that were done. But we realized that we have a lot to do in our cities, and our cities where nobody will remember them, and because they have a lack of this good quality public space. So because of that as well, we decided to work and to go on competitions, knowing that it's very difficult then to construct them and to be, you know, and to be part of this construction and all the difficulties that you have in the public construction. But also it's very encouraging, and it's very and when you can do it and you see a place like as the city town hall of Nakawa, how great it is and how people now can use it, and the quality that space has in the place, we are really happy with that.
Well, thank you. I think everything that you said, I hope resonates well with our students, because it's incredibly inspirational, and also everything you've said, I think, is very similar to our context, and a lot of the architects in our country also face similar challenges. But it's inspiring to see that you're on the other end of the spectrum compared to the rest of the architects, and so I hope that gives students inspiration. And thank you again for giving us your time. And we have a lot of students who are interested in interning with you, so if you will be taking interns post-pandemic, then we'll send them.
Yeah, we'll be happy to. We are always having people from all over coming here, and it's very interesting for us as well.
Okay. So,
thank you for inviting us, for having us. Really, it was well. Hopefully, we can do this in the future, face to face.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Okay. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.